Welcome to Honestly Rated, and today we're going to be talking about your favorite electric eel, Punk Shock. She is pretty fitting during this week because it's almost Easter, and for some reason Punk Shock was given like the Easter box treatment where, it said limited time Easter thing. She was in the cool little Easter box, and that's actually how I got my Punk Shock, so pretty cool there. Second reason that, it's even happening today is because someone requested it. So if you're feeling lucky, leave down your Skylander below. There's two ways that I pick. Either one, I pick, or two, if enough people like your comment, I'll probably do that one because there is a high hope for it. But before we go into the gameplay, let's talk about the lore. How did Punk Shock even become a Skylander in the beginning? Well, she was part of a royal family in the Wondrous Water, and she really didn't want to take the role of a princess, and she really liked playing with her crossbow and just listening to music. And she went outside of her kingdom, do whatever the fuck a person does outside in water. And when she came back, she noticed that her whole royal family lineage was fucking frozen by some snow trolls. And in Skylander fashion, she beat up those snow trolls, get them out of the kingdom. Gilgrunt saw that, rang up Eon, and she became a Skylander. Usually, not really breaking pace there, but it's still cool to know. And with all that other stuff out of the way, we can go finally into the moveset and figure out, honestly, is Punk Shock a worthy Skylander? Here we are with the first two moves. We got Spark Shot and Splash Bomb. These two moves feel very reminiscent of a different Skylander, and they work better in their own ways. So, the bow, you shoot it, right? It's a range item, does pretty solid damage, not too fast. Then Splash Bomb, another ranged unit, will create down this water effect, which slows down enemies in it, and if you shoot them while they're in it, it will create the water to become electrified and stun enemies in the middle. And it has a pretty nice area of effect right here, and it feels very reminiscent to Zap. Now Zap and obviously Punk Shock have two very different ways of applying this. Zap is a lot more situational and more of like a trap based item, while Punk Shock's really just combos well with her move. I definitely think Punk Shock's a really easier character to get this electrifying unit off of it, and makes it be more useful than Zap. But I don't know, it really depends. If you like complexity, I think Zap would be better, but for a more simpler time, Punk Shock's there. And they feel very counterintuitive because Zap's normal move is pretty fast, while Punk Shock's pretty slow, and even though it does solid damage, I don't know. It feels a little clunky for right now. It doesn't go through enemies or anything like that, so you're really shooting one thing at a time. But I do think the two first moves combo pretty well and make a fun, enjoyable first, couple levels. So, yeah, it gives a good up from me. A good thumbs up. The first move we can buy is Spark Splash. Spark Splash is pretty good. It's a defensive move. At least that's what I'm guessing they want it to be, because it allows you to just do a area control spark, which does 59 damage and stuns anybody for an easy getaway. That is its primary function. And they make sure to put a defensive measure where you can't just spam this over and over and keep enemies in the sky by putting a short delay on it. And I really do mean short. It's 3 seconds, which if you see these enemies floating for a while, it is almost also 3 seconds. So even though there is a delay, you can just hit them basically right after. Maybe just walk a little bit away, and then you can just smack them again. It's pretty powerful. It is her strongest move in her kit. Everything else does 20, so 59. That is a crazy margin to be there. It's obviously you run the risk of getting hit because of how close you need to be, and for a ranged character like that, if you are getting pummeled by multiple characters that maybe didn't get hit, it is kind of scary. And I think that's another way you could use it. Let's say you water bomb somebody, electrocute them, but some more enemies are coming in that aren't electrocuted. Well, if they get a little too close, just shock them again. It will shock the water again, and will electrify them again. So, yes, it's a nice next move. I don't think it's powerful, and I think it still creates an equal balance between moves and allows you to use the other moves and not feel like you only have to use one move to deal damage. Next up, I'm hitting you with a buy one get one free because we're doing high voltage and OHMG. Reason being is because the first move just increases damage, and physically there's nothing really much to talk about there. I could just talk about how much it increases, which I believe to be roughly 3 points higher. So Nothing extremely crazy, maybe even like 2. Like, wow, what an amazing upgrade. But the next one obviously has substance. The OHMG allows for the bolt to kind of spread out on the ground, as you see there, and hit multiple targets, which kind of fixed the problem where I had in the beginning, where the bolt being pretty slow and only hitting one target when getting up in close physical interactions can lead you to take massive damage. You're not the fastest character, you can definitely slow them down, and it's very easy that way, and now since we also have the alternate special, running away really isn't that hard, but still allowing you to hit multiple enemies from the back. Pause. Whoa. But allowing you to hit multiple enemies in a group, let's say it like that, is a nice upgrade. I definitely enjoy it. Damage upgrade, whatever. But yeah, let's go talk about the final move in the primary path. The next move is Hypercharge, which is increasement of movement speed, which I don't think really needs like a whole thing by itself. So we're going to the top path too, which Conductor and Destructor with H2 Throw. So yeah, Hypercharge makes us move faster. You can look at my character. I didn't really feel a difference moving faster, but hey, that's what they're saying. But let's talk about H2 Throw. H2 Throw allows us to throw 2 extra water balloons, not as big as a radius as the normal one. Small inky dinky ones, but it really helps. And I don't know how to convey it in words, but it really feels like it helped a lot. Sometimes with the water balloon, when I was throwing it before, just with one singular one, I felt like sometimes enemies that should have been shocked didn't end up getting shocked. Like I would see them blue, they were in the water, and nothing was happening. But with this, I felt like there was a easier time with it. Reason being is, for one, obviously bigger area effect. Like that just makes sense. 2, I noticed that the smaller ones would normally target enemies if they were in a big group, and they wouldn't target the same one. So that's pretty nice. And it isn't like anything crazy, you know, nothing insane, but it really does add more volatility to the water balloons, and it just makes it feel a lot more safer to go for. Sometimes the water balloons would go over enemies, sometimes they just won't lock on, but with a guaranteed extra 2 of them, which hopefully should lock on, guarantees that at least something is going to get hit by these water balloons. Next up is going to be Troubled Waters and Bolting Blob. Reason being is that Troubled Waters just is increasing our water balloon damage. Nothing much to talk about there. But the Bouncing Blob, or Bolted Blob, is actually something new. It allows us to create a big blob and create a big area effect of electricity and shocking enemies. Something that I kind of realized with Punk Shock is that a lot of our moves are just kind of reinventing a way of shocking enemies and just kind of not really feeling like anything different. And I feel like that kind of sucks, and I feel like that's just kind of derived just by having a character that is using electricity, or a character using fire, or, you know, just like a basic something like that. And I feel like it kind of hurts a character just a little bit, right? Like, so Punk Shock, she deals with electricity. All her moves have to deal with electricity in some way, and most moves / upgrades, they tend to be just you can stun your enemy with electricity. So like this move right here feels different, right? Like it's something we haven't seen before. A big radius blast of electricity. It does a good amount of damage, kind of risky because you get slowed because of it, but in the end of it all, it's still just electrifying an enemy, which you can do pretty easily, honestly, with all the moves you are given. You know, there's one move that instantly puts electricity on them, and then you just pair up your primary and secondary, and you are stunning an enemy again with less like work, less risk. So there's a feeling of a new move, but just like if you put it down into like a boiler point spot, it is just kind of what we've been doing already. Next up is going to be a pretty short segment, which is our bottom path, at least these first 2, with Positively Charged and It Hurts. Positively Charged puts a nice little RNG basis to our character, where sometimes our character will do like a little shock off of the tail and hurt the enemy. It's really it. It stops them in their tracks of moves. It doesn't like actually stun them. It's just a nice little jolt. Think of it like when you go on a trampoline and you touch the metal bars and you get that little jolt. It's basically the same thing here. And It Hurts is just a damage upgrade for our water, which you would think would tie back to the balloons, because the only reason we get the water puddle is because of our balloons. But what do I know? You know, What do I know? We instead want to just increase the damage of the balloons entirely. Not the water, just the balloons on contact. So, yeah, these are pretty simple moves. Or not even really moves, just additions to your character that there's not much talking about. Last up is Revolting Shock, which is actually the first move that I can say is pretty good, at least in the secondary paths. I can't really find a negative of it. I like how it does, and I think it adds on pretty well to just the tail move in general. Just like the top path, this is a hold button one, so you just hold down the tail button, and it's going to spin your tail around and knock enemies back. So it's going to do the initial damage from the shock, and then more damage from knocking people back. You can send people flying off to their untimely demise, which is, you know, my favorite thing to do in Skylanders. Not even fully killing the enemy, just sending them off into the sky, into the wind, into the void pit below. And I think it adds pretty well to this defensive measure because, hypothetically, right, you have a bunch of enemies running at you. You shock initially, and there is a bit of in lag to the move. And there's more enemies running towards you. Well, now, since your tail's spinning, they are going to get knocked back. You still get that free time to run, and you don't get punished for it. It's pretty cool that way. And it does 26 damage. It almost does the same amount of damage as a bolt. So, yeah, I do enjoy this one. But I think the bottom path, roughly, is still probably the worser one out of the two. I'd probably go with the top path just because, you know, the balloons, keeping enemies kind of stuck, works a lot better in my opinion than just having like a random jolt come out of my ass. But, hey, that's me. So, all we got left is going to be our Soul Gem, which is something I really don't like. The Electrocute Soul Gem is a pretty mediocre Soul Gem, I would say. I don't know what they're trying to go with it. It is a barrage of arrows going to one enemy, so its main use is just against bosses, I would say. Maybe mini bosses or anything that's really strong, but alone, maybe against enemies that are pretty fragile and get one-shotted, so chompies and the cockroaches. But using it in like a big hub against enemies is probably not for the best. You would probably be best off just normally blasting. Because one, you already have that upgrade, which kind of hits multiple enemies at once. This does less damage than the normal just bolt. And you are stuck. You cannot run. So, I want to know what they were trying to like go for. Like this, because Soul Gems I feel like are supposed to be just like somewhat overpowered in a sense, right? Like they're supposed to do a lot of damage to the point where you're like, yeah, this was worth it trying to find it. But this one I'm just like, eh. Doesn't do anything. I'm just doing a barrage of arrows, so not one of the more practical ones. It is pretty cool just blasting things, but yeah, it doesn't help in the slightest off of our normal moveset. And that is it. We have taken a look at Punk Shock, her every move, and Soul Gem, and it's time for me to give a rating. And personally, my rating for Punk Shock is going to be a 2.5. Reason being is that I just don't find a lot of the upgrades to be anything crazy, and I think that kind of brought down the character. I like the first moves. I like the primary, the secondary, and then the special, because they all work pretty well together. You have the range move, that combos with the primary move, and then the special move is a nice up close and personal move to create a little bit of a defense. But all those things lead to the same outcome where people get shocked. And I don't really find that really fun. Like everything led everything to be shocked, right? Like holding down the bombs that just create a shock barrier, which I feel like was probably worse than just doing a normal water balloon and then shocking them with just your bolts. And then the bottom path, no, while not shocking, still leads to just having downtime where you fling enemies away. I guess a little bit more nuance. You had the multiple like damage upgrades to the water balloons, and then the water that's what's inside the balloons, and like the random like little zappy thing. Like I understand like probably making a character like this was probably not easy when you have to base it around just electricity only, and you can't go with anything else, and it's not a character that can morph or anything like that. The only thing that I could say that would probably made it better is if they just kind of changed the tail move into something different. She said she liked music and the lore, so maybe making like a music-based move to hopefully pad out a little bit more diversity in the character probably would have helped it, but that's how I feel. Even with honestly rated, you can still have a different opinion. But yeah, that's all I gotta say here. Hope you guys enjoyed this honestly rated. There's a playlist of all of them if you haven't seen any of them before, so go check it out if you want. And leave down who you want to see next, because maybe you will be the next character I would like to rate. So, hope you guys have a great every day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.